think everybody knows who I am, Jerry Donahue. Um, this is a workshop about the 6 ways to work with a person's innate intelligence and wisdom to facilitate deep transformation. Um, so this workshop is, designed for people who are in the helping profession, whether they're counselors, healers, massage therapists, yoga teachers, who want to add to their skill set and more efficiently support others with transformation. It's also for psychospiritual practitioners who want to move into an occupation of formally supporting others with deep coaching. The purpose of the workshop is to introduce you to the inner presence inquiry coaching work, which follows principles that create the conditions for a person's innate wisdom and intelligence to emerge. And my goal is that you will leave here with a good understanding of working with people in this way, and get the flavor of it. My hope is that you'll resonate with the work enough to pursue further learning. The upcoming opportunities for further study is there's a 9-month course that trains coaches, and that's starting at the end of the month on March 30th. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of the workshop, I wanted to just introduce myself a little bit for those who don't know me. I've been teaching compassionate communication or nonviolent communication workshops and courses for the last 15 years. Besides, being very impactful for me on a personal level, it also supported me to really adopt this mindset of looking through this lens beyond the right and wrong, and to see things in terms of people's feelings and needs. Okay, so it's like an alternative to the right-wrong paradigm, or looking at things through judgment, either others or myself. So in addition to this compassionate communication work I've been doing, I've also been doing some deep classes around taking the compassionate communication framework and applying it internally. And so I've been working with that for about 10 to 12 years. And it's basically a synthesis of the compassionate communication, the depth psychology, and the Eastern Enlightenment practices or awareness practices. And the integration was a result of years of study and experience firsthand, the experiential psychological approaches, and also the Enlightenment awareness practices. Both of these bodies of wisdom have something unique to offer, and so I experimented with both worlds and made a synthesis that I felt was effective. And on a personal level, I've always had an eye on efficiency and depth. So as I facilitated these experiential groups, I was constantly asking the question of how can I support people to go deeper into their inner world in a safe way. My interest of supporting people to go deep just arose out of that sense of efficiency. It's like, for me, the more time and energy and actually money you spend on learning to go deep within yourself, I think the results and the benefits are commensurate with that. So the skills and principles I'll be reviewing in this presentation, I'll point to going deep for both the coach and the client in a context of abiding in what I call a high degree of presence. And these principles and skills, I'll be sharing reside in a method of inquiry I developed that allows people to connect with themselves in deeply transformative ways, with the guidance of a coach. The inner presence inquiry work is, and I just want to get this out there, is not therapy in a traditional sense, and it's not a traditional life coaching approach either. It's a facilitated session, and the way we start the session is first we sit down and have a pre-session conversation about what challenge you might want to work on, and we hone it down into something specific. And this, avoids just kind of sitting down and talking about some high level abstraction challenge you might have. And in this pre-session conversation, we get specific times and context in which the challenge has emerged in your life. And after we get this information, gather it up, it just takes, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. Then we formally start a session. This is the inquiry part. And, we go through a little grounding piece so both of us get in our bodies and set up the session so that you can connect with yourself in a deeper way. And after the grounding piece, the coach will prompt the client to with a series of prompts, and the client is just responsible for reporting what's happening inside in terms of their thoughts or feelings or body sensations, whatever's presenting at the time. So I actually use those contexts that was talked about earlier to bring those back into the session, and then the client tracks what's going on for themselves as they're connecting to those contexts. And the coach is just basically holding the space and doing these incisive prompts along the way, keeping track, writing notes about what the client is speaking about, and just reflecting back what's going on as the client's speaking about what's happening. So that's kind of a quick overview of a inner presence inquiry session that I do with people all the time. So let's jump into the meat of it here. I mentioned the term a high degree of presence. So that's one of the skills or principles that I find important to support people to connect with their innate wisdom or intelligence. And in order to do that, as a coach and as a client, it's important to get clear about what is and is not a high degree of presence. It's common to ask, how do you know when you're experiencing a high degree of presence, or how do you know you're abiding in such presence? How can you inspire clients to experience a high degree of presence during a session as a coach? Those are all good questions. And for me, the simple way to explain this concept of a high degree of presence is to look at it in a interpersonal context. So I like to, think of, when we're communicating with somebody, we're either, highly present to them, or we have a low degree of presence, right? So if you're with a loved one and they're talking about something that's challenging to them, or and you begin to think, be preoccupied with your own thoughts, or what to say next, or how to fix them, um, solutions, or maybe not even that. Maybe you're thinking about your day or something and not even listening. So I would say that would be a low degree of presence, right? That makes sense. Um, on the other hand, if you were listening to the loved one with the absence of all these conceptual overlays, the natural byproduct of that is there's a certain amount of empathy or spaciousness that kind of spontaneously emerges in my experience. And actually, your loved one would know that you were listening or highly present to them. You can just see it in your eyes, We can tell when somebody's preoccupied by the look in their eyes. So this notion of a high degree of presence or low degree of presence is kind of obvious in an interpersonal context, but it gets a little stickier or a little more confusing when we start to think about or consider, are we holding presence to ourselves or to parts of ourselves or aspects of ourselves? And so that's part of the learning and part of the coaching that you do and guide people is to make sure that they're holding presence for themselves as you move through an inquiry. I like to do an exercise around this so you all can get a experiential sense of what I'm talking about here. The challenge, the difficulty, the virtues of holding presence for yourself. Is everybody willing to go along with a little exercise? Okay. Yeah. All right. So I want you to think of some aspect of yourself that you don't like. Something that you hate. You have this characteristic or quality in yourself, and just think for a moment about that. Maybe think back of some time when you were upset with yourself in some way. Okay, next step is just close your eyes and think of a specific context in which that the thing you say you don't like or hate about yourself is present. When did it show up? What context was it? Just think about that context when it was active, some time or place. And as you're imagining this, context, just try to connect with the feelings that you're having about that quality or thing you don't like about yourself. Just write down the feelings you're having. Okay. Would somebody want to volunteer to share what they came up with? Okay. Corinne, yeah.
You hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So something that I don't like is my nervousness in
Okay.
social situations. So you want to know my feelings? How
Yeah.
I
What's
feel
your
when
what's
I'm
your,
speaking?
what's your
Um,
feelings about that?
I think the dominant feeling is embarrassment
Okay.
and um, feeling lost and ashamed that I don't know how to conduct myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And probably wishing you had more ease in social situations.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
A longing for, yeah, ease.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to share here?
I will.
Athena? Yeah.
So,
Or Bindu. Sorry.
yeah, what come up for me is I have IBS and
Yeah.
I absolutely hate it. And I
Uh,
hate that myself.
okay. Yeah. So the feeling that came up about that.
um, no, just this absolute hatred.
Yeah. So is it anger or?
Yeah, there's a lot of feelings, anger, frustration,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some sadness in there.
Because you wish you had health, right?
Messed up my life and I've tried to heal it for a long time, but it's still
Okay.
there.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Who else would like to share?
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that sometimes I like to fill the empty space when I'm in social situations, and maybe I'm not actively listening enough. And I do feel like there's something maybe sometimes over my head that I'm not seeing, and uh, I guess I could be a better listener, I think.
Okay.
So definitely that.
What's your feeling about that? Not being the listener you would like.
Well, I think maybe it's control and feeling inexperienced.
Well,
Um,
I mean, when you think about you not being the listener you would like, are you frustrated about that and would like it to change, or?
I think there's a lack of emotion, a lack of emotion. I need to reconnect with that side of myself that can kind of focus on someone else and not in my own mental, loop.
Right.
That's difficult.
Okay. So you're feeling an urgency to to do
Maybe
something.
even a joke. Yeah, maybe even tell a joke or
Okay.
kind of not ignore, but a little bit, yes,
Okay.
something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. So um, thanks for sharing, everybody. I just wanted to get a couple examples there. Just so I can make a couple of points about this. Um, one is, excuse me, when when you're coaching somebody, or when you're doing inner work for yourself, a very important question is what inside of you is leading the inquiry. Okay. And most often, what we do is we have something in our lives that's challenging and we want to change it. And so we go to support people, and the part that doesn't like that aspect of ourselves is the one that's motivated to do, personal growth work or spiritual growth work. And that, you know, there's something challenging about that if you hold a value that that presence is, you know, the ultimate healer when doing inquiry work. So basically, it's the way we term it in the work that I teach is we have one part trying to change another part of yourself. Okay. And the one part that's trying to change the other part doesn't have a lot of empathy or understanding or even compassion for that part of yourself you don't like. So that's not a very good start or an effective start to you know, go on within your inner world to work with something in the way that I see things, at least. So we, you know, I hope you can see the dilemma, you know, and when we're turning our attention to do internal work, we need a wider context, some bird's eye view to lead the inquiry. And to me, that's just simply a learning challenge. And part of the learning is what is a part of me looking at another part of me, and what part of me is just pure high degree of presence. So I want to drive this point home a little bit more by giving you another example, and I can make some additional points. It's a common example I use. And it's a example of somebody that has a perfectionist part. Anybody here have that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a common one. So suppose a client comes to me and says they're just disgusted and sick and tired of being at the mercy of their perfectionist part, you know. You know, this part causes so much stress and anxiety when doing tasks. So automatically in my mind as the coach, I would be hearing that disgusted part that's looking at the perfectionist part, okay? Now, if I chime in with the disgusted part of the client and say, yes, let's see if we can get rid of that, I'd be colluding with their lack of awareness of the disgusted part. And I'd actually be reinforcing their identification with that part. The part that's disgusted with the perfectionist part is, you know, like I said, not very accepting, empathetic, or compassionate towards the perfectionist part. It just wants the perfectionist part to change, to go away. And that's what I would be colluding with if I just chimed in with that non-accepting energy as a coach. So I would consider this, you know, if I did that as a coach, I would consider this me operating out of a low degree of presence in the inquiry session. So again, let me draw a contrast here. So what would the coach do if he or she's in a high degree of presence? Well, it would be different. So instead of unwittingly chiming in with the client's disgusted part, the coach can support the client to become